Today's episode connects with many families on a very personal level. When a parent first learns that their child is on autism spectrum, it can bring a wave of emotions, from confusion and worry to reflection and countless questions. It's a moment that feels big, sometimes overwhelming, and often takes the time to process. But alongside the challenges, there is also space for growth, understanding, and discovering strength, both in the child and within the family. Today, we'll be talking about finding your feet after your child receives an autism diagnosis, a conversation about hope, resilience, and the ways parents can start to navigate this new chapter with compassion and confidence. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Align podcast, your space for honest conversations and fresh perspectives. I'm your host, Ruhi, and I want to start by giving a big thank you to everyone tuning in, whether you're listening or watching. My guest today brings not only experience but also warmth and perspective that I believe will comfort and inspire anyone on this journey. Whether you are a parent, caregiver, loved one, or simply someone who wants to better understand and support families, this episode is for you. Natalie, thank you so much for being here with us. I truly appreciate your willingness to share your insights and experience with my audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Lovely. I know this conversation will mean a lot to so many people who are listening and watching, whether they are parents facing a recent autism diagnosis, as I said, loved ones looking for to offer support, or anyone seeking to better understand this journey. So, to begin with, I would love for our listeners to get to know you a little better. Could you please share a bit about your journey, about yourself, and what inspired you to do the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you. So I had my first baby boy back in 2014, and pregnancy was great, birth was great, and he was developing, doing all the things that he would normally typically do. And I took him to the maternal health nurse for an 18-month checkup. And at this point, he was doing a lot of things that now I can see are autistic traits. But at the time, I just thought he was living his best life. I didn't know what autism was. I didn't know what the traits or the symptoms were. I didn't understand what was involved. And so at that point in time, at 18 months, he was doing a lot of stimming. So, for anyone who is watching, a stim, if you are not aware, can be either something with your hands. So, like there's a lot of hand flapping, there's a lot of this going on. There's also vocal stimming, where you're using your voice to make specific sounds. And there's a whole range of other stims, but those were the two main ones that he was doing. He was doing a lot of tippy toe walking and wasn't really responding to his name. He had words, but he had lost his words. And so, but it happened all very gradually. I was heavily pregnant with my daughter at the time, and I didn't know what was what. So we went in for the maternal health nurse checkup, and she advised that she thought that we should go to a pediatrician to just have a check over. Of course, she knew exactly what was going on, but being a maternal health nurse, she couldn't diagnose. So fast forward, as you know, with pediatricians, it can take quite some time before you get in. By that time, my daughter was 6 weeks old. And so we'd gone in. My son was he was just about to turn 2, and my daughter was 6 weeks, like I said. And I had gone to the appointment, and I remember sitting in the waiting room thinking to myself, am I going to walk through those doors and my life is going to change? And it was almost like someone was trying to prepare me for what was about to unfold. And so we walked through the doors, and the pediatrician did all of her respective tests. She, got him to play and, measured his height and his weight and did all the things that a pediatrician would do. And then she sat down and she looked me right in the eye and she said, I'm sorry, your son has autism. Good luck getting him out of that world. And I just remember thinking, what? What is happening? What do you mean? And the way that it was portrayed, it was pretty much delivered in a way that it was a death sentence. And so I went home and I grieved. I grieved for him. I grieved for me. I grieved for our family. The idea of what our life would have been like had he been typical. What was our life going to be like now? Will he ever talk? Will he ever say, I love you? Am I going to hear those words? What happens when he gets older? Is he going to be able to have a job? Will he have friends? Will he get married? What happens when I die? What do I do then? Who's going to look after him? And so all of these thoughts raced through my mind, and I didn't know how to manage. I didn't know how to cope. And so, coming from a Greek background, it was very much like, you're not to tell anyone. He's going to grow out of his autism, which, although is a lovely thought, it does not happen. Autism, you don't grow out of autism. It's not typically the way that of what occurs. And so I didn't tell anyone for 4 years. I hid that he was autistic for 4 years for shame that people would blame me, that people would ostracize him, that they would come to me and say, "You are a terrible mum because you took the medication, that you sat too close to the computer, that you ate the wrong thing, that you stressed too much." Like all of these things, these thoughts come into your head. And culturally, I was expected that I was going to not say anything. And so I lived like that for 4 years. And one day I ran into a mum, just a random mum at the park, and no one else was there. And I remember telling her that my son was autistic. And it literally felt like a sack of potatoes had just dropped off my shoulders. And it felt like for the first time in 4 years I could breathe. And I was like, right, I can't keep this a secret anymore because I can't live like he is, that I should be ashamed of him, that I should be ashamed of me. And from that moment, I decided that I was going to be very, very open with what was happening, how I was coping, and what we were going to do moving forward. And it really opened so many doors around how I was going to cope. And I was a better mum to my kids because I was more open rather than living in a very closed off mentality that didn't serve anyone. So it was a rough trot, but we are in a very different situation now. And so that's why I've created my company You Are Seen, because I help and support predominantly mums, because mums generally are the primary caregivers of autistic children while dads go out and work. And while I do support dads, most of my clients are mums, and just around their mindsets, looking at how we can reframe things, because a lot of the time people often think that autism is a death sentence, and rather your reaction to it is a death sentence, not the actual diagnosis. So for culturally, a lot of the time, this idea that we're going to have these perfect children who are going to go off and get perfect scores in primary school and high school, and get amazing jobs and be very well established in society. And then when a child receives an autism diagnosis, that idea of where our children are going to be evaporates, and we need to build new beliefs, new values, and a new understanding of how we're going to move forward. And that's primarily how I support my mums to be able to really move forward with that, and not so much stay in the grief and the loss and the isolation.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm pretty sure many of our listeners, they would relate to it, especially to the part where you said that when you happen to meet another woman where you had shared your experience, and it felt a lot more better for you, and that's when you decided that you're not going to keep it to yourself and you're
Mm,
going to figure out how to take it forward. Hearing about your journey and what led you here gives such a real glimpse into the heart behind the work that you do. And
yeah.
I think many of our listeners, and who is watching this episode right now, will find comfort in knowing that this kind of passion often grows out of very personal experience, and that they are not alone. And if they're still in middle of figuring out, I believe this episode is definitely going to give them some hope. So thanks for sharing that.
No, you're
Now,
so
Now, every parent's story is unique, but the moment of hearing those words, which is your child is on the autism spectrum, can bring so many emotions all at once. Would you feel comfortable sharing what that moment was like for you personally? I know you spoke about how you encountered another woman and you shared your experience, and while you were waiting in the hospital, you were just thinking how my life would be going forward. Would you like to share, uh, what thoughts or feelings stood out the most at that time? So any of our listeners who are listening and watching right now, they may be able to understand it better.
Yeah, sure. Lots of grief, lots of overwhelm, so much stress, and a lot of catastrophizing. And when I say catastrophizing, this idea that in your mind where you are making up a story that of you what you think is gonna happen. Like, I was making up the story that, you know, he'll never talk. Well, I can safely say that my son, who is now 10, is talking more than enough. But, you know, in that time, I couldn't see so much into the future. So this idea that he was never going to talk, I was telling myself that story, and I believed it to be true because nothing over the years, it took quite a few years before he was able to start talking, and it felt like that was never going to happen. So that's one part is catastrophizing. The other part was definitely, and again, I say undiagnosed because it was undiagnosed PTSD, where I would, which is post traumatic stress disorder, which is me waking up in the middle of the night, literally covered in sweat, crying my eyes out, not knowing what tomorrow was going to bring. You know, when we look at the stress levels, they're incomprehensible. So there was a study done at the University of Wisconsin, I think it was back in 2009, and they looked at two groups of people. The first group was a group of soldiers in war. So you've got live bullets flying past your head. And then in the other group, you're looking at mums who are raising teenagers or adult children who have grown up to be adults who are also on the autism spectrum. And when they looked at the stress levels of the soldiers and of the mums were exactly the same. Like, that just blows my mind that you could possibly die in this scenario where you're a soldier fighting in a live war, and over here you've got a mum who is just trying to raise her child who's autistic, and the stress levels are exactly the same. So, mums and one would presume that when that mum received an autism diagnosis that the stress levels would have been even higher. So we need, at the moment, autism in Australia is 1 in 40. We are not coping. Parents are overwhelmed, stressed out, freaked out, not sure where to go. And that feeling of complete isolation is it's so hard because you feel like you can't reach out to other people. And when you do, sometimes you don't always get met with the nicest comments. There have definitely been comments, put my way. And I know there've been plenty of comments put through to my other clients and to friends who have been not nice, right? Or that feeling where there was a moment in when my son was in kindergarten and I was at a parent night and all the mums were laughing about how all the children were singing the bone song. I'm not sure if you know it. So it's like the neck bone's attached to the shoulder bone and the shoulder bone's connected to the elbow bone. And so it's just this cute song from the kids. And they were laughing about how the kids were singing it. And I remember singing there, saying to myself, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Like, I know that your child can't sing these words. Just don't cry because it was so utterly devastating to know that he couldn't say these words. And that's half the battle is trying to fight what's up here because our brain is much stronger than we think. And if we can really manage it versus it managing us, we're already on the front foot. So that's where a lot of the emotions come in.
Really appreciate you sharing because there are a lot of parents listening right now who might be in that exact space. And your honesty will remind them that what they are feeling is completely valid and there is always a support available. So thanks for that. Um,
No, of
once-
course.
yeah, once the initial emotions began to settle a little, what helped you to take those very first steps forward?
Sorry, it cut out there for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Once the initial emotions began to settle a little, what really helped you to take those very first steps forward?
Yeah. I think for me, it was the understanding that I really needed to help my child, right? And I see this so much with clients. They want to throw everything at supporting the child and doing everything, every therapy, every, food diet change, all these sort of things. And what they fail to understand is if you as a mum,
Mhm.
if you as a parent are not looking after yourself, there is no way that you can support your child. This is often why when you're on an airplane, they will often say to you, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. as a parent, if you haven't put your oxygen mask on, there's no way that you can help your child. And so we really struggle with that because parents will spend all of their time and all of their energy trying to sort out their or to help their autistic child rather than helping themselves first. And that was a long lesson that I needed to learn because I, like many parents, threw everything at my child and really went into burnout multiple times. And it wasn't until I realized, hang on, I need to start looking after myself before I can start looking after my child. And that was the turning point, I think, because when you're in burnout, you can't you there's no way that first of all that you can help your child. You can't co-regulate with your autistic child. You can't then read the signs of what's coming up. So you can't even anticipate when a meltdown is coming. And that's really difficult. So this is why I often urge so many parents to seek help, seek support, because you can't do it on your own. It's impossible. I definitely tried, and it doesn't work. And it's so difficult, especially when there's shame and there's blame associated sometimes with the diagnosis. So, pouring into yourself first and foremost is the best way that you can do it. And then we can take steps in to support your child. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much. One of the things I would definitely say is there's a saying in the autism community of once you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. And that puts it into perspective in the fact that every child is going to be different. And what works for one won't work for all. And so figuring out your child's journey is specific to that child. So although as parents, sometimes we as parents can be so desperate for a solution, we just need to focus on what's going on with our child and not be so focused on what everybody else is doing. Just stay in what's going on with your child and how we can best support you and not get overwhelmed. The biggest thing we can do is try to take on too much, too many therapies, too many changes, and then you don't actually know what sticks. You don't know what's working and what's not working. So just one step at a time, working out what's going to work for your child and then moving forward. Because if you throw everything at it, you will never succeed because you won't know what's working. And that's probably one of the biggest things. Mhm. No, that's mm. Oh, yeah. Um, yes, in from the point of view that you need to have a community around you, right? If you don't have a community around you, you will not you won't survive. As women, we need to be able to confide in other women. Our therapy is by talking to our girlfriends. Our therapy is being able to chat and connect and be able to share the energy that's going on. And if you put yourself in isolation, I think that's probably one of the most damaging things that you can do. But the biggest strength was having my girlfriends around me and being able to get on the phone and have a big cry and learn to be able to let go of that energy because there were only so many things that were in my control, and most of it wasn't in my control. There were some things, yes, but most of it wasn't. I think having the strength of a beautiful, healthy marriage plays a big role. But if we, I often see a lot of clients where marriages dissolve because just from the sheer amount of stress that comes on from raising an autistic child and just the financial part of it, but also the decisions that need to be made. So having a healthy relationship with your husband or your partner and being able to make sure that you prioritize date nights. right? Even in the mess, even in the hard, is being able to have someone that you can really connect with outside of what's going on. And if that's a shared goal, maybe that's that you get to go and work out together. Maybe that you get to go and do a beautiful date night together or a coffee just down at the cafe. Um, but you need to start pouring back into you. Otherwise, it all just tends to fall apart. So the strengths I definitely would say is my girlfriends and my husband. Mm. Um, I didn't know how to cope. And so because I didn't know how to cope, I used alcohol as a coping mechanism. So if someone looked at my son because he was stimming or made like a strange face or looked at him or just didn't understand, I would pour myself a drink of wine. And it wasn't uncommon for me to drink a bottle of wine over 2 days. That would have been easy. And I was using it as a way of coping, of numbing the pain, of like not being able to feel anything because I honestly thought that that was the only way forward. And about 3 years ago, I decided that I was no longer going to drink because it was an unhealthy way to live. And it was a way that I just didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to not feel my emotions. And so I gave it up and I've not drunk any alcohol for 3 years now, which I'm super proud of. But, you know, it was a scary time because no one's there to um to monitor you. Like no one's there to say, "Oh, actually, I don't think that you should have that glass of alcohol," or "Why are you feeling these feelings? Like let's talk about these feelings and what's coming up." I didn't have a coach in the beginning, and so I didn't know that what I was feeling was so normal. What I didn't know that these feelings were such strong, overwhelming feelings, but instead of feeling them, I was just constantly trying to push them down, constantly trying to pretend that they weren't there and hoping that they were just going to suddenly disappear. And we do that, it just makes things so much worse and actually makes those feelings even bigger. And not to mention, when we drink the alcohol has a lot of sugar in it, which makes a lot of women put on weight. But then it also messes with your mind because it messes with your hormones. All the alcohol changes the way that you are showing up. Maybe you're hungover, you can't play with your children as well as you could. So there's just so many aspects of where alcohol can really play into such a terrible state of being. But alcohol is just one thing. Some people use shopping, like a shopping addiction. There's people who use drugs, online dating. Maybe they're going outside of the marriage like for affairs and whatnot. Maybe there's so many different ways that people will use things as a coping mechanism. Sometimes it's just doom scrolling on the iPhone. So knowing what it is, we can have have a lot of awareness around what that is, and then we can understand why. As a coach, then I can ask you the questions around what's coming up for you instead of this, so that we can get down to the root cause. Because once you have awareness, it opens up a huge doorway into knowing so much more about yourself and so much more about your child. Because as we know, as a parent, you are the doctor. You are the person that knows your child the best. You're the expert, not the pediatrician, not the specialist, not the speechy, not the OT. You know your child the best because you're with them the most. But we can't tap into that information if we're constantly trying to cover up that information or really, close off the mind with a coping mechanism like drinking. So it just sort of muddles and hazes the mind and the clarity. So that's where when you have that information, you can make the right decisions for your children. But it's only through a few different steps that you can do to make sure that you have that clarity. Mm, I definitely would say my husband, and I think even my mum. So my mum would come with me to a whole bunch of different appointments, not because I couldn't handle the appointments, but because it was a second set of ears. It was another person to take in the information, another person to remember what was being said. And I think a lot of parents think that they can't bring their parent or another person to the appointment for fear of judgment, for fear of like, someone's going to say something. But there's so much information being like given to you, and you can only write and take in so much. You're already on the back foot because you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, your nervous system is in fight or flight, you're not coping. And so then what are you, it's you're going to be so much more limited in taking in that information. So having another person definitely would be there is an amazing idea. But I think between my mum and my husband have been my rocks for the tears, the overwhelm, the it felt at the beginning, it felt like pure devastation. So having someone to just remind me that it's gonna be okay, remind me of that, God is always looking after us and that there's always a plan, reminding me that we're always on a journey for a reason, and that sometimes when we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we can't see that journey because we're so focused on the here and now. We're only focused on what's happening that we can't see, two steps in front of ourselves. So that makes it really difficult. But having someone there just to remind you, just to say it's going to be okay, take a breath, cry, feel what you need to feel, no problems. I would also want to add in that, we often talk about self-care. It's a very big thing at the moment, self-care and how we need to look after ourselves. And absolutely, I totally agree. But I would say find what that one thing is for you to do self-care so that you can schedule it. And when I say schedule it, I literally wanted you to put it into the diary. Like I want you to put it physically, write it in your diary and say this is what's going to happen at this time. So for me personally, I am a water baby, so I want to go for a bath and I need it to be like 500 degrees. So it needs to be super hot. And I just need to be able to sit there and decompress all of the emotions. And it's a space where I feel like I can cry if I need to cry. It's a place where I feel like I can be vulnerable. It's a place where I can be creative. And it's a space where I find that I can journal if I need to journal and really have those feelings free flowing. Um, so if you are lucky enough to have a partner or a supportive family that can take the children or the child for, you know, maybe an hour and a half, just while you can decompress and do those things, that is a huge, huge win and a huge step in the right direction. Because if we don't get that, I can guarantee you burnout is on the horizon, and it's not nice because with burnout comes illness. There's sometimes hospitalization, and there's, even further, and this is to the very nth degree of like, suicidal ideation, so suicidal thoughts, and that's obviously in the most extreme cases, but it's definitely been with a few of my clients. So we just need to make sure that we are pouring back into ourselves. When my son was younger, it felt like he couldn't do a lot of the things that his typical peers were doing. And now when I look at him, I see the complete opposite. And a lot of the time, we have put autism under the disabled category. And, and I'm not saying this is, and again, that you can use that as a very generalized term, right? I personally don't look at my son and say that he is disabled because he can do things that typical kids can't do. So when and for an example of that is that he loves rock climbing. He can rock climb blindfolded for goodness sakes. Like, this kid is next level. So, you know, that mindset change around how we're going to reframe the way that we perceive our child. Because if we always perceive it that we need to help them go to the toilet, get changed, have a shower, and that he needs assistance. Don't get me wrong, there was definitely a long time where he needed the assistance. But there was a certain time, there was a certain point in his life where I needed to be like, hang on, he needs to do that now. Like, and it wasn't when he was completely 100% ready. It was when I could see, okay, we've hit the point where I can see how he can do this. I'm going to leave the clothes there. You can get changed, right? Here are your clothes. Or like, this is how you're going to wash your hair. And I would model what it would look like for him to wash his hair. And we have to presume competence. We have to presume that they know what they're doing, even if they're non speaking, right? We have to presume that they understand what we're saying and that they can actually do the things. Now, are there cases where this is not going to be the case? 100 million percent, obviously. And in those cases, no, I wouldn't be like, well, buddy, you can go wash your hair on your own. And if a child can't lift their arms up above their head, of course, that's not going to happen. But in the position where you have an autistic child who looks capable, who can do all those things, let's allow them to do those things. Let's allow them to actually take the reins and be as independent as possibly as they can be. Because if we're constantly going to do something for them, we're never allowing them to really shine in their independence. And I think that's where we need to, especially, I know that for a fact of Greek parents and of Greek grandparents, they want to do everything for him, right? They want to make his breakfast and they want to make him lunch and they want to tie his shoelaces. Well, hang on, let him do it. Let him make his own breakfast, right? Is he going to burn the toast one time? Sure. Will he not put like enough honey or enough peanut butter on the toast? Probably, right? But that's how we learned. We have to allow them to make the mistakes so that we can help them correct them to see what the right thing is. And I think that is just comes part and parcel with independence, and comes part and parcel with, as they grow, as we know with autistic kids, they need so much more time to build on that independence than a typical child. So let's start the runway quite early on so that we can build upon it as they keep going on, as they keep getting older. Now you said, "Mm, you're not alone. Um, you need to take a breath. Everything is going to be okay. He is not broken. You are not broken. And together, one step in front of the other, you will find your way back to your child. It starts with you first, but you will make the most incredible parent. You will become a warrior for that child. And he or she will be so proud of you as the parent that you become and the parent that you step up to be. But you can only do that by looking after yourself first. So I hope that they take that with a grain of salt. I hope that they realize that they are doing so much and doing more than they could ever possibly imagine. That life isn't exactly how they planned it to be, but it's okay. I know it's not how you thought, how you imagined, how you thought the way that you perceived life was going to be. But it's still going to be just as beautiful. It's still going to be just as magical. There's just going to be a different way. And that's totally okay. And we're going to go slow and steady and we're going to get there anyway. gosh, so many. I think as a parent, you will never forget, especially as a parent who is raising a non-speaking child, the day that they start speaking and the day that they say, "I love you." Now, there is not a day that goes by that I don't tell my children that I love them about 4 billion times. Like it's excessive. But I just love, especially with my autistic son, hearing him say that he loves me back. That will never ever get old because there was a long period of time. He wasn't speaking until I think he started saying his first words at about 5.5. Um, and even then, there were only single words. So there was a long period of time where I never got to hear that. I never got to hear, "I love you," and all the things that a 5-year-old would say. And I don't take that for granted. So I love that I get to say that to him and that he gets to say it back to me. I get to say it to my daughter, and she will absolutely say it back to me with gusto. And that for me is it lights me up in a way that I never wanna not hear that again. It's so beautiful and so powerful, and I think if we can take those micro moments of joy and put them in a little jar for when we are feeling low and tired and exhausted, and remind ourselves what we can be so grateful of and how we can really move the needle just one thing at a time. Not 20 things at a time, just one thing at a time that we're gonna work on right on today. One thing that we're gonna work on in this hour. One thing that we're gonna do in this 1 minute, and how we can really keep moving the needle. Mhm. Right. It's not over. Don't give up yet. There is so much life to live, and I know that you feel like quitting, and I know that it's hard. I know that you wanna give up and you wanna run away and that you don't wanna do the things that you're currently doing, but I can tell you it does get better. It does get easier. There are moments that are so beautiful that are waiting for you to experience, but you can't get to those moments until you get through these bits. So keep going. Don't give up. You are an amazing, amazing parent for what you are doing for your child, and just keep going. Thank you for having me. Thank you.